Thank you all. I'm very humbled to be here. This is kind of where my start in soil health started. In the 90s, we had a No-Till on the Plains had a bus tour to South Dakota and Dakota Lakes and Dan Forgey's deal. So that's kind of where it started for me. Luckily enough, my dad went along and we went home. The next day, we sold all of our tillage equipment and ordered a no-till drill. So we were that sold. We've done a lot since then and screwed up a lot since then. So everything I'm going to talk to you about here today, like this might not apply to you, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, okay? I'm just a farmer and a rancher like you all, so I'm not a professional farmer or expert by any means. And kind of what I want you to get out of this is how did we build a business that was more profitable for one, less reliant on government subsidies, crop insurance, less reliant on commercial inputs, and one that actually healed the soil. And then by default, we found that it also was healing our ecosystem. So we'll start with that. And we'll go through this kind of quick because this is like 50 minutes of slides in 30 minutes. So some of the contextual stuff, we're going to just fly through. I got this Working Cows podcast from Bert Teichert. Okay, I think this is pretty applicable. You're going to hear a lot of stuff. You got to filter through all that stuff and make it fit for your operation. Okay. 100% dry land, silty clay loam soils predominantly. There's our cash crops. We have a cow-calf, stocker, and grass-finished beef operation as well. We'll skip through that. We're going to skip through most of this stuff. You have to change your mindset, right? You hear that all the time. Jerry did a good job yesterday talking about this. Like to fix, we're farming a degraded system, okay? These soils are degraded. Like to fix it all starts with capturing solar energy. And he explained how to do that yesterday. Briefly, I'll tell you my observations. And what I've learned is no-till by itself is not enough to heal our soils. No-till with cover crops once every 4 years is not enough. We didn't start seeing rapid changes in our soil until we started aggressively cover cropping or adding perennials into the sequence. We'll skip through this. Go to Ranching for Profit and take holistic management courses, okay? That's just something you need to do. Just to show you a little context of our operation, just briefly. So we still farm on some 2/3 share arrangements with some landlords it's kind of away from the farm, and we still kind of conventionally no-till that, I'll say, with no cover crops and stuff. This is kind of the base of the operation, or was. So this contiguous land base I either own, or my wife and I either own, or we cash rent from my mom. Okay, so when we came back from Ranching for Profit, we're like, okay, we're gonna make sweeping changes. So this is where we started. Just some stuff through the years we've done. We've added about 575 acres of perennial sequences and stuff. We put in about 30,000 feet of water lines to make this easy. We knew livestock were gonna be integral, like for this business model we wanted, so we wanted to make it easy. And then we've also added a bunch of perennial borders to the fields, pollinators, for wildlife, and then we also fence a lot of these, and then they're doubled as lanes so we can easily migrate our cattle across the landscape. Annual cropping, I'm not going to talk anything about that other than to say, like, we don't have a crop rotation anymore to speak of. Like in this, if we plant a cash crop, it's going to be milo or triticale or rye. Okay, we want our cash crops to also double as forage for livestock, and we want to have options. Okay, so that's what we do here, and all our diversity comes in through our cover crops now. Cover crops, and I'll briefly go through some of this stuff. We do full season covers. We do about 1 acre per cow, and we're kind of ramping this up even more. We've been doing this for quite a while, and this is part of our drought plan. 22, 23, this really saved us in the drought. Okay, we started in the middle of 21 until maybe this winter, we're still in drought where we're at. So we'll come off of our we'll come off of our perennials or pastures or whatever, and we go into these full season covers maybe in August. And at this time, this time was middle of August, 2022. The neighbors' pastures were all completely toast, grazed to the ground. They're selling cattle and feeding livestock, okay? And we're grazing cover crops. That's one of the things I want you to see is like how resilient this system has been, and especially in drought. That's what it can look like in a good year. That's 150 cow days an acre. That's what we got off that. And those are the cows in there. If we don't graze these things in the summer, a lot of times we'll just drill our cereal, triticale or rye, just green right into this. It takes a little fertility to make this happen and a lot of water. The last 2 years we haven't done this just because we've been so dry. But you can see the cover we got on the soil. And you can't really see it in there, but like that, we'll stockpile graze those fields then in the winter so they can pick at that triticale and rye and then all the dry matter. And then also then we have options in the spring. A lot of times we'll harvest that cereal and sell it for seed. Okay, and this has been a really profitable deal for us as well. So an easy window is after harvest, wheat harvest. So that's obvious, okay? This is where we save so much of our herbicide. We're reducing our herbicides by 2/3. We're reducing our fertilizer by nearly 60%. This stuff isn't new. I remember when I was a young kid, like probably 45 years ago, after wheat harvest, we would fill the drills with Sedan, and they were single disc drills. They weren't no-till drills by any means, and we would drill into the wheat stubble, and whatever came up, it was sunflowers and foxtail and crabgrass and Sedan, and then we turned the cattle out on this stuff. Okay, so this isn't new. Always leaving plenty of armor. Cool season mixes for us, we got to wait until kind of the middle of August to get them to work. Because most of them won't survive our heat if we plant them, the 1st of June, or we harvest wheat or triticale and stuff would be the middle of June, so the cool seasons, most of them won't survive. But if we wait till August, we can do this. We like a little bit of this because we'll fence line wean calves on this, and then we can run stockers on stuff like this and get really good gains through the wintertime. And then we'd follow this up with milo in the spring, and again, this is a very profitable rotation for us. And triticale and rye through the winter, like we can graze most of this stuff most winters if we get moisture. And then in the spring, we have a lot of options. We can get on this again with pears. A lot of times we'll graze it and let it regrow and harvest it for seed. Sometimes we'll graze it twice. Sometimes we'll just let it go and, spray it out for cover. If we need some hay, we can do that too. So there's just a lot of options. And that's just rye after milo. So one thing about cover crops, or I guess a couple things. If you've got moisture and you've got a window to seed something, we need to be seeding something, okay? We've got to be feeding these soils constantly, and the only way to do that is with the living root, okay? So yeah, take advantage of that. So this was June of this year, actually. So we were D4 drought from last summer up till the 1st of May. And we got average rainfall in May and June. And you could go out in our fields in June, and this is amazing, like how does nature do this? And we had more earthworms than I've ever seen in my life. Like just handfuls of earthworms. Like how does nature do that after a drought like that long? How does this work? So there's a lot of talk about biologicals, like compost extracts, bugs in a jug, or, whatever, applying to your land. And I've always been really hesitant to do this for several reasons, but the main one is, like, my philosophy has always been, if you put diversity out there and animals, Mother Nature over time is going to put there what belongs there. And I think as a general rule, that's probably true. But we are farming degraded soils, so maybe there's some benefit to this. So a couple of years, we've been trying some of this for a couple of years. We like to trial stuff before we take it real large scale. But so 23 last year, we started using, this is a product from Fed and Happy, it's called. It's a Dan Razor's company in Hutchinson, Kansas. It's a worm castings. And there's biochar in there and different food sources. It's a really good product, screen down. And how we applied it, we mixed this at 20% with all of our seed and run it through the air seeder. So that's kind of what it looked like, different seed mixes. The thing about these things is they have to be easy, or if it slows you down, you're not gonna do it. So doing that kind of slowed me down some days. So if it wasn't for my daughter and another high school help, mixing this stuff as we went along, it would have kind of been a pain. But what we did is we left strips in every field we did this on. And we did it on virtually every acre from spring all the way to fall planting. And left strips, with the extra compartment on the cart of seed that wasn't treated with this. And visually what we saw in the fields, in every field, visually what we saw was nothing. Like nothing above ground, nothing below ground. We just really, I'd be lying to you if I said we could see a significant difference in any of it. So we did some biological testing on these as well. And just to clarify this, the top two fields on there are both fields that we've had a long history of soil health principles, cover crops and grazing. That bottom field on there is one that it's long-term no-till, 25, 30 years, but it's just kind of been a wheat, milo, excuse me, soybean rotation, just basic, something like that. No cover crops, no grazing. And so kind of what jumps out at you, when we applied this. And sampling this, I'll tell you how I sampled. I did 15 cores right down the row, and the crop was up about like that, about 30 days after planting. Good, decent conditions. 15 cores right down the row, take a step, take a core, moved over 50 feet, and did another one in the control. Just a few highlights. I think what we're seeing is we definitely see, I think in my opinion, on these fields that we're feeding the system, like the biology's there, like we're seeing significant increase in CO2. So we're stimulating the biology in my opinion. This is 1 year of data, keep in mind. Maybe we're mineralizing some more nutrients, you can see maybe. Mycorrhizae, I don't know. Biodiversity index, we're not really adding any biology with this, with this product is what we're talking about here. But my main takeaway is we're stimulating the biology. I don't know what we're gonna see next year. This is not a silver bullet, and if you're gonna do it on fields that you're not gonna follow the soil health principles on, I would say you're not gonna see a response, in my opinion. So we gotta feed the system. By feeding the system, I mean having something growing all the time so carbon's going into the soil. Feeding the biology. So there's the soil health principles, and those are good. I will say in Kansas, western Kansas, southwest Kansas, Oklahoma, you get down, these are tough environments. And to keep in an annual cropping system, to keep cover on the soil, it is a challenge, okay? And you can try your hardest, but you always have times, drought. It is a real challenge to keep cover on the soil. Keeping living roots in the soil. Yeah, we try to do it as long as possible, but again, 365 days a year in an annual cropping system in our environment is next to impossible, okay? But Mother Nature did this, right? All the time. So that's kind of what leads me to this, I guess. About 10 years ago, we started experimenting with perennial sequences because I wanted to rapidly improve soil health, okay? And they always say to mimic Mother Nature. Well, Mother Nature doesn't put annuals anywhere in the system unless we screwed up the perennials. Okay, so that's kind of been my passion lately, has just been these perennial systems. And looking at different things. We have a cool season pasture we seeded. Rush County, Kansas, I wouldn't recommend a cool season pasture. It just, most of the years it just is dormant because we're so hot and dry. There has been a few years though that we've got some really good grazing out of this. My plan was to take this out and then crop it again, and we might do that, or I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I hate to take any of these out, to be honest with you. And then another piece we've looked at is Kernza. Does anybody know anything about Kernza or remotely familiar with Kernza at all? It's a cool season perennial grass. I mean, intermediate wheatgrass is what it is. You all, I'm sure, are very familiar with it. It's been selected to, be able to harvest it for grain. So this is my field in 2021. And I did this as part of a research project, so it was a 3-year project. And I'll get into a little bit of that. I really like the idea of Kernza because it's flexible for us. Like, you can cut it for grain, you can graze it, you can hay it, and do a lot of things. That's kind of what it looks like at harvest. I hired a neighbor to cut it. We don't have a combine. Works really good. And then this is where, I don't like Kernza like this, okay? So this is monoculture Kernza, and I don't like monocultures. But part of this research project we were doing was we were going to seed pasture crop diverse annual mixes into the Kernza after Kernza harvest. Tried that 3 years with 0 luck, just because we just have never got the rain to get those annuals to grow. I don't like Kernza because in this situation, because they want you to take that residue off to get light down to the crown so the Kernza grows. My idea for Kernza, if we do another field, is we're going to put this in a polyculture of some sort with low-growing perennials. And first and foremost, we would have to be able to make money grazing that. And then if the opportunity arose, we would harvest the Kernza for grain. Okay, depends on the market. 10 minutes. We better hurry. That 1 year, it was the most profitable thing I've ever done on the farm, though, the Kernza. Yep.
Is it palatable? Cattle eat it? Do you have what grazing it?
That straw, yeah. Well, we didn't graze it in the spring that year. We grazed it in the fall a little bit. And then since then, it really hasn't grown much, to be honest with you. Yeah, the last 2 years, we haven't even harvested it. It's just been under just drought. Yeah. So this is my favorite thing on the farm, these really diverse mixes. They take longer to establish. The seeds cost more, but in the end, this is what drives me and what I really love. There's like 19 species on here. The last field we did probably had between 40 and 50. So year one, we're grazing this stuff, and it's a lot of volunteer cover crops that come up. Year 2, it kind of sleeps, and then year 3, it leaps, as they say. So that's what we're doing on it. And we move these on daily moves, this stuff here, because we want to try to maximize animal impact and revenue off this. So we're paying farmland cash rents on this ground. So that was the recovery in 21. This was another field that year, 3rd year, a different field, and we didn't graze this one until later. And some of that's going to seed, which is fine with me. I don't mind that because I want to build a seed bank up on these soils as well. I put up there the kind of the animal days we're taking so you can kind of get a reference of what we're doing. So spring of 2022, we were dry. We didn't know if we were going to have much grass, and then we got rain in May and June, and these things just exploded. And I mean, yeah, they're just beautiful. So this is what we're leaving behind. This was that same paddock in 22, and we go into D4 drought in the summer of 2022. This is the recovery we got on that paddock. So, and the neighbors have nothing, okay? And then you fast forward a year, okay, so we're D4 drought up till May 1st of this year, and I'm scared to death at this point. Okay, we made it through fine, but I'm like, so we destocked yearlings, and my grass-finished beef program, we kill them in June, middle of June into June, and like, how are we going to finish grass-fed beef on something like this? So we turn them out, and the only thing that was green normally we're green this time of year, we're going. And the only thing that was green was the deep-rooted perennials. So we turned out, and I moved these every 3 days. I'd move them, and then I'd feed alfalfa for 2 days, just trying to finish these beef. Then it started raining. So May and June, we got average rainfall again in May and June, which has saved us the last 2 years. That's the grass-finished beef there. They ended up doing great, finished great. That was in July. That was a different field. So I just want you to understand the resilience of the system that we've built in a drought. That's what we're leaving behind again. So what are some more of the results we're seeing? We haven't used pour-on wormers for years. Like dung beetles are coming back into the system, right? And then last year we start to see the big ones, like flying around out there. This is all cool stuff. Carpenter bees, native pollinators, okay? This is the ones we're after. And bird species, like these are all indicators of a healthy ecosystem. So these brown-headed cowbirds, dickcissels, meadowlarks, swallows, they just follow the herd around when you're grazing, just cool stuff to see. Organic matters, when we started, most of our organic matters were upper ones to low twos, and even long-term no-till, they kind of just stay the same. Okay, well, it wasn't until we started doing cover crops perennials, now most of those fields are all up to about 3.5. Okay, our native, well-managed native is about 6% where we're at. What else are we seeing? This is typical silt loam soils, even with no-till and a few cover crops. Like if you have fallow periods, the biology collapses, so your soil structure, the aggregates collapse. And then this is after a few years of perennials. Like, look at the aggregation. And we're driving that aggregation deeper into the profile with these perennial systems. These fields are all right across the fence from each other. Like where we're just starting, no-till and some cover crops, you can see this stuff down below is not good. Long-term, no-till, cover crops, grazing, good aggregation, and this is perennial, all right across the fence. Yeah, and that's just a Sicer milk vetch root. And you just can't do this with annuals. And water stable aggregates. Jay Fuhrer was at my farm about a year ago and did this for me. And it was dry, as an understatement. And soils need water to function. And so water stable aggregates, this field here, long-term no-till cover crops, graze, pretty intensive. This was at Kernza field, monoculture perennial. And this one is the real diverse perennial mixes, okay? This is in the dead of winter, with really not any biology going on, but just that diversity is what's building this system. Economics, what do we got? 5 minutes. I'm gonna skip through most of this. It depends. I will show you this one, and I don't want you to pay attention really to the numbers per se, is the difference in the numbers. And if you have farm ground and pasture and have the ability to integrate livestock, okay, this is where the profits really start to come in, is when you can integrate livestock, and it also speeds up the whole ecological system as well, okay, of restoring the landscape. You have the perfect system in place to get the same results you are currently getting. That's from Ranching for Profit. And there's my name and my cell phone number and my email. So you can't follow me on social media because I'm not on it. But I would welcome you at any time to call me, email me, or catch me here. If you're in Kansas, feel free to stop by and we'll show you what we're doing. Yeah, I'd love to share. So any questions?
Are you fertilizing the perennials?
No, we do not fertilize the perennials. So, yeah, so once they're established, the only thing we're doing is managing our grazing on that land. There's nothing anymore, so, yep.
Is that stuff from Dan Razor economical to ship? I mean, or is it something you need to be close to him to make it work as far as?
Shipping costs, are shipping costs, so they'd probably be, but the product itself, last year, in a 2,000-pound tote, it was only $800. It's like way too cheap. And I think he's gonna raise his prices this year, but it's a really cool product. So I wanna apply it this year on some perennial stuff just to see some of this, to see if we can't speed up like this process of regenerating the soils and the perennials, so. What's that?
You'll just broadcast it?
Probably if we apply that vermicompost or the worm castings to the perennials, I'm thinking I'll probably mix it with some seed of some sort and then drill it so it's down in the soil. Interseed something. Yep.
What's your fertility on your full season covers that you're
as far as fertility applied. When we started, we added fertility, because when we started, sometimes we didn't, and then like the crops were terribly nitrogen deficient and we'd have nothing. So if you're just starting, it's okay, to apply some fertility to get this to grow. Now, it depends on the field. Maybe I would apply 20 pounds of N, maybe, but most of the fields I don't apply anything to, for cover crops and stuff.
How long did it take to where you're comfortable not putting N on?
5 years maybe, yeah. And we would do lower rate, maybe the first year we'd do 40 or 50, is where we started. So not a lot, yeah. Yep.
On that, one of those first pictures you showed, that sorghum sedan in drought, do you have trouble with nitrates?
Boy, if I got time, I could tell you a very expensive lesson. Okay, so we've grown these diverse cover crops for a long time, and we've always sampled. Well, we used to sample all the time, and it'd come back good. So I've really become complacent, and I don't sample anymore. Okay, so with cover crops, the number one thing, if you're going to graze, put in a lot of diversity. Okay, so I'll share this with you. This year, I had a field that I had no intention of grazing. This wasn't even in my mind when we seeded it. We just wanted some cover, quick cover. So we seeded 3 pounds of pearl millet and 10 pounds of sun hemp. And we were going to kill that out and plant triticale in the fall. And we're moving the cattle across the landscape. And I'm like, well, let's just, it's on the way. Let's just put them on there a week. It was fair time. I didn't want to mess with them. And then we'll go to the pasture. So this would have been first week of August. Okay, so we turn out bulls to calve the 1st of April. Normally by then, we would have been 80 to 90% bred up. Okay, so we move on. I don't think anything of it. And later in the fall, we go to pull the bulls out. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of cows bulling out there. Like, there's a lot of cattle in heat. And, we're doing this, and I'm like, this isn't good. And then we preg checked this fall, and it was like, this is kind of like your story, Doug, where it's open, 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 and you kind of just put your head down. And I'll bet you in that group, there was 40 to 50% opens. And I am probably nearly 100% positive that it was elevated nitrates in that drought-stressed pearl millet and sun hemp cover crop for that 1 week. I think we aborted a bunch of fetuses is what happened. I'm pretty sure that's probably what happened. So a lot of diversity, and just test it to be safe, okay? So we're going on with plan B with that herd now. So we'll get through it, but yeah, that's an experience. So I've had a lot of train wrecks, but hopefully that helps you, prevent you from having one, so.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all, yep.